Over the years, Square Enix have perfected their HD 2D JRPG titles. I fall a sucker for them every time as I love the formula and think it perfectly suits a turn-based epic adventure. The Adventures of Elliot shares this style but alters this formula slightly by having full action combat. Did I think this title stands toe-to-toe with the likes of Octopath Traveler, or did this change affect the quality? What's up? How's it going, people? Welcome to Casual Gamer Reviews. If you want to support the channel, then please leave a like, subscribe and share with your friends. If you don't like it, then leave a thumbs down and let me know how I can be better for you. The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales took me 25 hours to complete all 3 endings. Reviewed on Nintendo Switch 2. The Adventures of Elliot is a top-down HD 2D pixel art action RPG title. It plays more like a classic Zelda title than it does a traditional RPG like Final Fantasy or Octopath Traveler. The combat is split into 2 main components: Elliot's weapons and Faye's magic. Faye is the fairy companion that accompanies Elliot on his travels. Elliot unlocks 7 weapons on his journey that he can battle with. These are sword, spear, bow, bomb, scythe on chain, boomerang and hammer. He also has a shield to use defensively that is tied to a stamina meter but also has the ability to parry attacks. Straight blocking shields from all damage, but stamina takes a hit. A perfect parry will not touch stamina and will also stun an enemy, leaving them open to attacks. The shield is always equipped as it is tied to the right bumper, and then you can equip 2 attacking weapons which are tied to 2 different face buttons. There is a weapon wheel which can be utilized for quick switching of weapons, so you are never tied down. Each offers something slightly different. For example, the sword is quick, close range attacks, the hammer is slow but more powerful close range attacks, the spear and scythe offer mid-range, and the bow, boomerang and bomb provide longer range, although the bomb is more like a grenade in that you need to time your throw. The weapons each have a special attack that can be activated by holding down their corresponding attack button, but other than that they are just simple swipes. No combos, just one moveset. This is where I was most disappointed with the combat. I feel like if you're going to have action combat in 2026, you need more variation to the movesets to keep it interesting. The weapons can be upgraded up to level 3 and each tier unlocks a new special attack. They are not upgraded in the conventional way though. You don't purchase it in a shop or unlock it with skill points, you simply find the next level of weapon through adventuring. For example, I found the level 3 bow before the level 2 one, so my bow went straight from level 1 to level 3. This system I did like, and it encouraged exploration, which is where I think the Adventures of Elliot is at its strongest. The other side of combat is Faye and her powers. These are slowly learned throughout the main story, but can provide some real variety to how you tackle a challenge in both combat and traversal. Faye has powers like a teleport that instantly moves Elliot to her position, combust which lights her on fire to both attack and light the path in dark environments, and a sprint that launches Elliot at high speed about the place. There are more powers to unlock, but I don't want to spoil them all for you. These can enhance combat encounters, especially bosses, giving you more options to overcome them. For example, if a boss has a shield, I can send Faye inside it whilst on fire to slowly tick away the health bar whilst I find a way to take down the shield. Perhaps a boss is causing the ground to disappear and I can use Faye to teleport Elliot to safe ground. Combat felt at its best when Faye's powers are involved. Bosses are also to a high standard in the Adventures of Elliot, and aside from a few reskins, are probably its most memorable aspect. Bosses blend all the elements of gameplay, combining the combat and platforming. They also feel challenging, and there are a handful I died to multiple times on normal difficulty, as they require a specific method to defeat, and figuring out that puzzle is part of the fun. They kept me on my toes, and for a short while made me forget how bland normal combat encounters can be, as I swiped my sword in the same animation 100 times. There are reskins though, and these become more apparent towards the end, so I do wish there were more original bosses. To wrap up talking about the combat, I have to touch on Magicite. Magicite is this game's version of weapon buffs. You can get more general buffs in the form of trinkets that Elliot can wear, but Magicite is core to this game's combat system and is applicable to a single weapon. When you defeat enemies or find secret chests, you have the chance to find Magicite fragments. You then take these back to the main city and you can make Magicite from them. Each Magicite created has a level from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, and there's a specific weapon type attached to each also. These could be general attack increases, new special move unlocks, adding an extra attack animation for every swipe, an explosion after a heavy attack, and so on. As the motion of combat itself is pretty basic, you will live or die by your Magicite choices, especially in the later game. You have a Magicite box that restricts how many you can equip, and this can be upgraded for a monetary cost to increase its size. I do like the idea of Magicite, but I don't think there was enough interesting ones to really revolutionize the gameplay. If Elliot were to ever get a sequel, I'd hope that they could really refine and invest more into this system. As I say once again, if you go down the action RPG route, you need to make sure the combat feels diverse and not samey. As I mentioned earlier, where I think the Adventures of Elliot is at its best is with the exploration. Elliot is an adventurer after all, and trust me, you won't forget that, as he likes to tell literally everyone you speak to. There are many optional caves and temples across Philadelphia for you to pillage for treasure. Some of these will contain rare loot like a weapon, and will end with an optional challenging boss, which is an added treat. Most will end with a currency chest of money or magicite. The network of cave systems are always interesting to dive into, as they present a puzzle in themselves on how to successfully navigate them to get to the prize at the end. Sometimes you'll be hard locked as you need a specific phase skill to progress, giving it some Metroidvania-like elements. This title actually has 4 layers of each cave and temple due to the way the maps work. I will break this down more in the story section, but Elliot is a time travel game. Because of this, the map of Philadelphia is recreated 4 times to represent different ages, and you can simultaneously jump between them with fast travel. It sounds cool, but I was severely disappointed with how it's applied. The whole map is laid out the same, and honestly you would not think it was any different were it not for the main city. That's the only place that really sees any change, and that's a massive disappointment. If you're going to have 4 maps from distinct time periods overlaying each other, you need to have more distinguishing features, or else it just feels like you're retracing the same steps over and over again. Where it does have a small inflection of greatness is with the exploration through the caves and temples. Each of the caves and temples present themselves slightly differently in each time period, meaning some of them you can only progress through in a certain era. Some of the larger temples will split off their main rewards, meaning you can only get one in a time period and the other in a separate one. It's an interesting twist on making the exploration interesting when the overworld is so disappointingly similar. There is fast travel through beacons you discover, and they are pretty frequent throughout the maps. These will also act as your save points and checkpoints if you die. There is a revive mechanic that allows you to spend in-game currency to revive at increasing costs for each time used, which made the game easy enough that I never had to go all the way back to a checkpoint, but I suppose you could make it artificially harder for yourself if you wanted to. Overall, I am very split on the gameplay, with the exploration and bosses being a positive, but the map layouts and basic combat being negatives. An area that I don't really have any negatives to talk about though are the visuals. I have always loved these HD 2D style games, as I find the aesthetic really pleasing. That beautiful blend of colourful pixel art and fantastic sprite work, coupled with the unique camera perspective, I just think all of its aspects complement themselves perfectly. In this game in particular, I think there is some really incredible scenery with the main city, especially in the Age of Magic, and I think the boss designs are fantastic, especially the final boss and true final boss. Elliot's sprite is great, which is essential as that will be what you see for the whole game. In addition, there are character portraits that appear during dialogue between characters. I thought all of these were impressively crafted, and each of the main characters had several versions to capture different emotions. This goes one step further with Faye, who always sits in a little ring in the bottom left of the screen, and she's constantly switching between portraits to express emotions throughout the game, even if it isn't a dedicated dialogue sequence, but would reflect in real time what was happening. That attention to detail should be applauded. I do think this style suits turn-based combat more, however, as you can get more creative with the preset animations rather than having to adapt to real-time combat and unpredictable movements. For example, this game simply does not have any flair with its combat animations outside of a particular special move because of this. In terms of performance, I did notice it get a bit stuttery at times on the Switch 2, with noticeable frame dips in high intensity areas. This was pretty short-lived and infrequent, but worth mentioning nonetheless. The majority of the time it felt pretty smooth, even in handheld, which is how I played the game for more than half of my playtime. When it comes to audio, just like the gameplay, I'm very split down the middle. On one hand, the soundtrack is superb. There were several times where I put the controller down just to take a moment to appreciate the music that was playing. The game is composed by Tomohiro Nakamachi and Yuto Moritani, who the game's producer said in a Q&A were new to the team, but they really impressed with their demo discs. It doesn't surprise me because the OST is excellent. They've released a physical version which contains over 100 tracks across 4 CDs, which I'm interested in. On the other hand is the voice acting. While some performances I think are great, like Ludmilla, Mao and Princess Furia, I think some aren't great, including the main 2 characters, Elliot and Faye. This is absolutely nothing to do with the voice actors themselves, who are doing the best with the material that's given to them, but the direction is poor. Faye is unfortunately annoying to listen to. I don't like the pitch of the voice and I don't like the constant butting in about what to do. There's an option in the menu to turn down the frequency she talks, and I've never ticked the box faster. Elliot isn't annoying to listen to per se, but his dialogue is bland and generic. He is a paint-by-numbers hero type with nothing interesting to say, but constantly spelling out that he's an adventurer in case you forgot. In the true ending, you do uncover some secrets about his character, which provides promise for a potential sequel, but for the majority of the game, he doesn't give you much to be inspired by. The Adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales is named as such because the story is a tale that spans many millennia. In a world where the beast tribes and humans are at odds with each other, the princess of the kingdom casts a protection spell that keeps the people safe from the beastly invaders. When the princess's spell starts to waver, it is up to the adventurer Elliot to discover and travel through time gates to find a solution. He meets a fairy companion along the way, and together they must save the present timeline. The overall narrative is good, and a concept that explores friendship and the alienation of discrimination, which I think is important, but it is implemented poorly. This is entirely down to this game having 3 endings. It simply does not need the first 2. In fact, I think having the first 2 is a detriment to the game. The good ending and the bad ending, as these 2 are dubbed, are so lackluster and end suddenly that it's an injustice to the player to roll credits here. It does have a line of dialogue after the credits that hint at exploring more, but it's confusing for the player. I got the bad ending first and I was so unsatisfied with the result. It didn't make sense, nothing got answered, and if I had ended my journey there, I would have scored this game a lot lower. The third ending, or the true ending, is the only one that makes sense and satisfyingly concludes the stories. I don't understand why this isn't the only ending, especially considering it only took me another 5 hours or so from the bad ending to the true ending. This finale is great from both a narrative and a gameplay standpoint, but I can't help but feel a little soured from the 2 rolling of credits I had before it. As for side content, there is some. Obviously there is the 3 endings I just mentioned, but if you want any kind of satisfaction from the story, I think it's a requirement to get the true ending. Outside of this, the side content presents itself in exploration. There are many caves and temples to pillage for rare weapon upgrades and magicite. I would recommend doing this before completing the story, however, as there isn't any content to keep you going after the final credits roll, so getting magicite or stronger weapons doesn't feel worthwhile. There will be some optional and secret bosses in these dungeons, but not enough to make you feel the drive to explore. There are also these little challenge dungeons which come as either combat or platforming challenges. Sometimes they would offer a health upgrade as a reward, sometimes it would be a new Fae ability or an upgrade to her existing ones. I never really found the combat ones to be particularly testing, but some of the platforming ones can get pretty wild. They really test your understanding of Fae's powers and often require precision jumps, which can be hard to execute in a 2.5D perspective. Having health upgrades as a reward is very similar to the Legend of Zelda, so that will be familiar to a lot of people, and it's a good system. There are several side quests to do as well, which appear in their own quest log and even flag to you ones that you haven't found yet. These are extremely hit and miss though, and while some prove interesting, provide some good backstory for the ages across time, especially the ones involving Miyu, some can feel really pointless and forgettable, like finding a lost adventurer or some ingredients for a medicine. Lastly are the cats. As you will soon learn, the Adventures of Elliot has a central theme for the felines. Throughout the maps there are several cats to find, and the more you find, the more rare rewards you can get. This includes an item that increases the money you get from defeating enemies by a whole 100%. There are other useful upgrades unlocked through the cat collection too, making this a nifty little piece of side content. Plus, who doesn't like stroking a cat? The Adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales is a good experiment from Square Enix, manipulating their tried and true formula to try something different with a game using action combat. While the visuals are stunning using their iconic HD 2D graphics, I thought the game lacked the excitement in combat that they can provide with their turn-based titles. The story is great if you go for the true ending, but it is marred by both endings that come before it. I did enjoy the Zelda-like exploration and the dungeon-style gameplay, and the OST is amazing, although Faye can be extremely annoying. In summary, it is a good game, but one that has several flaws and things to improve upon if they were to make a sequel, but it would be one that I'd be interested in. The Adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales gets a casual gamer score of 7 out of 10. Check the channel for my recent reviews of Mina the Hollower, 007 First Light and Saros. If you're looking for a new game to play, then check out my best games of August video for everything releasing this month. If you want to support the channel, then leave a like, subscribe and share with your friends. If you didn't like it, then leave a thumbs down and I will try to be better next time. Let me know in the comments below if you'll be picking up the Adventures of Elliot, and for everything else, casual gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.